You're listening to FFOP Radio.
Reach the
Everybody, and welcome to the show. My name is Dave, and this is the Review Universe from FFOPradio.com. Back for another great episode. So let's jump right into it because we've got so much to talk about, and it's surprising to me. So first of all, let me introduce you to my guest. You know him, you love him. He's been on here a dozen, maybe more times in this year alone. It's PJ, Mr. Status to himself, back on the show. Welcome, PJ.
I welcome Poop J. Welcome.
It's so funny you're keeping that alive.
I will never let it die. Poop J is not going anywhere.
Hey, that's fine. You know what? I would kill for a nickname because that's just me. Never got one. You've got so many, and you're now just rubbing it in my face. Even the bad ones you're keeping. But you know what? That's you. You got to do you.
I mean, on this show, I'm PJ and RJ sometimes, so.
It's true.
But less and less frequent. Probably, right? I think last episode I only did it once. Anyway, let me introduce you also to my usual co-host / wife. Krista's over there.
I took a quiz on which car's car I am. And I'm Sally, apparently.
Yeah, well, who else do you have? Flo?
Well, it was, you could have been any, like they could have dubbed you as any kind of the cars with their personalities.
Okay. Enough of that. We can't. I wanted to do one single thing before the pre-show, the green room that nobody's going to hear. We started talking about Obi-Wan, so I figured, let's talk about that for a smidge. I don't know how long a smidge is going to be.
An hour and a half.
But I've got a movie sitting here. Okay, let's back it up. This is the Review Universe, and if you listen to the last episode of FFOE Radio, when I was talking to RJ, I pitched him an idea of, hey, I'll tell you about a movie. I'm not going to tell you the title. If at the end you go, I want to see the movie, I'll tell you the title. If you go, no, what, that's enough for me, then it's going to be a mystery. But now we're going to talk about Obi-Wan a little bit because, God damn it, every time PJ is on the show, he's like, hey, let's talk about Star Wars. He doesn't say that, obviously. Sometimes I lead him into it. Sometimes he brings it up naturally.
You definitely leaned me into this one.
No, yeah, I definitely did. But that was before the show, and then it blossomed into what we're about to talk about. So, because here's the thing. I say to PJ, I say, hey, we're going to do the show. But before we do, what's your opinion on Obi-Wan? The miniseries, which I'm sure is going to balloon out to a universe in itself, because how can Disney stop at 6 episodes? So, PJ, tell me again, for the listener, how you found Obi-Wan, the thing, the 6-episode miniseries that's going on. How did you perceive it? How did you experience it? What was it like for you?
After I finished watching Obi-Wan, I thought the same thing I thought before the show was even created. It's 100% unnecessary. It doesn't do anything for the story. It doesn't it doesn't give us any new necessarily plots. It doesn't open up any more holes to new anything. Mm-hmm. It's just, it exists and it's there and it shows us a weird space and time when Obi-Wan existed that we really didn't need to see. But that doesn't mean that the show isn't good. It's just, it's completely unnecessary. It's just, they could have not done it and it would have been fine.
So it's a little different because as you were describing it, I'm like, hey, you're describing to me the prequel trilogy. But then you're like, it's fine. I'm like, oh, big divergence there.
Well, I think the prequel trilogies are fine except for the first movie. I think the first movie is terrible.
God.
Episode 1 is awful, but the other ones are salvageable.
This is, okay, you're blowing me away again. Because when you were like, Obi-Wan was meh, I was like, what? And now you're like, 2 out of the 3 prequel are good? Or salvageable. I shouldn't say good. You didn't say good. Salvageable. Okay, this is weird. PJ, what are we doing here? What are we doing here? I feel like
I'm a Star Wars fan and I love Star Wars, but I'm 100% truthful in my feelings on Star Wars. So
right, I'm totally on board with your honesty with the things that you like. I'm not blown away by that. I'm blown away by the fact that you're like, meh, because there's no one in my life who is as dedicated to it as you are.
Yeah, I think that's I think the average person watching Obi-Wan's going to love it. I don't think they're going to think too far into it. But for me, who's like really intermingled in every aspect of Star Wars between the books, the shows, and everything, I'm like, I don't need to know what Obi-Wan's doing at this point in time. I know what he's doing. He's watching over a Luke. That's what he does for 30 years. Like, it just happens.
That's one of the things about media, TV shows, books, movies, whatever, shows. What we're going to be treated to is what should be, not always is, but what should be the most interesting segment of our main character's life. And I feel like Star Wars, the original 8, 9, and 10 or whatever, 3, 4, and 5, 5, 6, and 7, whatever the fucking 70s one on is.
4, 5, and 6.
4, 5, and 6. What we got there was, this is the most interesting time of these characters' lives. Like, Luke is in dog shit and then becomes the universe's savior. So, of course, that's the most important part of his life. Like, if
that's not true either, though.
Really, though? Because, like, in 4, 5, and 6...
No, because in Mandalorian, we get to see Luke in probably the best part of his life. It's the only time they ever show him in that.
Okay, hold on. Please. I can't handle this, but I need to ask you a question about this then. So what time period does The Mandalorian take place?
4 or 5 years after episode 6. So 4 or 5 years after the end of the Empire.
Okay, so it's Star Wars, The Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi, right? Am I correct?
Yes.
Chronologically? Okay, so it takes place between The Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi.
Yes.
Right, okay, but here's the thing. Since the original trilogy existed 50 years before The Mandalorian, it would be incredibly easy, yes, to come in and then fill in some gaps after the fact. But as a story as it was conceived by George Lucas, that wildly fabulous hack, he had no idea that someone that wasn't him would come in and buy him lock, stock, and barrel for $4 billion and build an entire universe out of a 3-movie trilogy that whatever, if you want to believe that he had 17 movies in his head, but was just waiting for the opportunity to strike, whatever.
I mean, I think of it this way. He had a lot of movies in his head, but he also created the prequels.
Yeah, totally.
So...
He's a hack. But let me ask you this then. If you're going to say, okay, the most interesting and important parts of Luke's life were not 4, 5, and 6, in which he goes from rags to riches and then savior of the universe. What does he do in between 5 and 6?
You mean, what does he do between 6 and 7?
3, 4, 5.
There's a 30-year difference between 6 and 7.
Oh, God damn it.
This is a lot. This is
Okay. So So The Mandalorian takes place after the original trilogy.
Yeah, so it takes place after 6.
Then how can he was the savior of the fucking universe in 6? How does he get more interesting after that?
Because the world doesn't know he was the savior. Nobody knows he did what he did. Nobody.
But no, you don't need to. Just because no one knows you're interesting does not mean that you like.
It's because he finds himself more and just becomes better at what he is.
Right, but that doesn't mean jack shit to the universe. He was important while saving the universe. He's not important while taking a spiritual journey to find out who Luke is.
In Mandalorian, he takes Baby Yoda.
You mean Grogu?
Grogu.
Yes.
So
he takes Grogu.
Let me ask you this. Are you a big Yaddle fan?
I mean, I'm not a Yaddle fan, but...
So remember when we were like, this may have been, pick any episode you were on because I can't remember. But when you were talking about how Yoda is an unknown species and he's like one of a kind, and I'm like, bullshit. And then later I personally proactively found out about Yaddle. What the fuck? Why were you keeping that from me? We had evidence that there was more than one Yoda species.
Yaddle was literally on the fucking council. So whenever they had the meetings, Yaddle was literally sitting there in the circle with him, Mace Windu, and Obi-Wan.
And I didn't know that because I'm not a Star Wars fan. I think it's trash. But when you, the Star Wars fan, was telling me, the non-Star Wars fan, Yoda's one of a kind, and I was like, really? And you're like, except for Yaddle. But you didn't say that out loud. It was in your head.
Yaddle was like the female gremlin of the movie.
But she's still...
Did they make Grogu?
I don't know. So, like, I don't know where they're going with Grogu, to be honest. I couldn't even take a guess.
Here's where they're going. Plushies, action figures.
I sell some planters.
Branded cups.
I think they just wanted to make Mandalorian like a buddy cop thing. So Grogu was his buddy cop.
I think they wanted to sell fucking toys. Because here's the thing. If you want to sell toys, the Yoda action figure is not going to fly off the shelves to let's be stereotypical, to ladies and kids. You're going to have the hardcore fans be like, check out my Yoda action figure. But everyone else is going to be like, he looks like a dried out green raisin turd. But if you want to snag that tasty, tasty kid and lady demographic, you make him look like a fucking Furby that's not going to eat your face while you're asleep.
True.
And voila.
I don't think they're trying to sell stuff. I believe in the guy who's creating the story for Star Wars, because he's literally doing it all. Right. He also did all the animated series. He's the guy who created Ahsoka. He's the guy who created Clone Wars. That guy who created all of that is the guy who's currently in charge of all of Star Wars.
Right. And you're telling me he's doing it for the artistic integrity and not because Grogu is an adorable little shit.
No, I think that might have been Jon Favreau's influence, not his.
I don't want to talk about Star Wars anymore, PJ. I just wanted to get your hot take on Obi-Wan, and now we're so deep in the lore, I am completely lost. And the fact that you are this could be obfuscation itself. When I was right now, something could be happening that I'm unaware of, and later I'll find out, and it'll be a Yaddle situation. And I'll go, PJ, what the fuck? And you're like, yeah, I knew about that. I just chose not to tell you about it because it would have destroyed my argument. I'm talking as you right now. Anyway, okay, so whatever. Star Wars.
I can go real deep in that rabbit hole real fast.
No,
I can't.
Believe you me, because all I did was turn over one rock and fell to the fucking core of the earth. And I didn't even care to. I was Alice in Wonderland. I was skipping along by a stream throwing stones. I saw you, the rabbit, and fell into an insane Star Wars world where I'm the only one who's like, what about Star Trek? And everybody's like, what? So, all that out of the way. The real reason for the season is, so I'm going to describe to you a movie that I really enjoy that I'm guaranteeing you have not seen. And if you have any questions, you want to talk about what's happening as I describe it to you, feel free, because it's pretty crazy. And at the end, I'm going to say, hey, RJ, goddamn shit.
There it
That's
goes.
the second time today.
We should put a counter. We should get a counter ready.
Listen, it was only 1.5 because the first time I just said R.
Yeah, it's true.
And if you hadn't planted the fucking seed at the beginning of the episode like you always do, it would make it a lot easier. That's what you do. You sabotage me with your similar names and Star Wars.
I mean, I call myself Poop J. Why don't you just call me Poop J? That works so much easier.
Because, I don't know. Poop J seems like it's so derogatory. Even though you're owning it, it'd be like calling a thalidomide baby Flipper. And he's like, no, I'm totally cool with it. And he gives you a high five with his little nub arm. I would feel uncomfortable with that. Even though I can't remember how you got the name Poop J. It was probably my fault. But now I'm like the bully that grows up and comes back to the high school reunion. I'm like, oh, God, sorry. And you're like, no, it's totally cool. I am an asshat. And I'm like, no. So anyway, and there's no segue to this anymore because we're just gonna have to jump in and it's gonna feel like a train wreck and you're gonna
first. Let's go.
Okay. So the movie I want to describe to you is a dinosaur movie, obviously, because and I had a whole joke bit planned when I was gonna be like, okay, so we start out and it's the Dinoco 400, right? I was gonna roll into a hilarious Cars bit because that's been the running gag of my life. And I was like, just kidding. It actually starts in a galaxy far away a long, long time ago. And then it would be a hilarious chuckle too. But here we are 15 minutes in where we have basically ripped apart the fabric of time and space in the Star Wars. I almost said Trek.
We lightninged McQueened ourselves right in here.
Yeah,
Ka-chow.
it's a real kachiga. It's a real disaster. Okay, so let me describe this movie to you because I really enjoy it.
Okay.
All right, so we open up, right, and it's like a luxury plane. And it's like, you know those big like triple-decker ones they have over in the UK for transatlantic flights? It's one of those, and it has Thrust Industries on the side. No, sorry. God damn it. I ruined the joke already because the movie has a joke. Anyway, we're inside like a, guess what? It's a plane. We're in a nice fancy room, right? There's a fireplace. There's a zebra skin rug and there's a floozy. She disappears from the movie after this, so she's not important. But then we have this like really fat, old, disgusting pockmarked dude with these gross sunglasses. I don't know where he got these things, but he's like, I got to go take care of some business. Check out this fucking photo album that's also upholstered in zebra hide because our dude, Maston Thrust is his name, is a big game hunter. So he says, take a look at this book. I got to go deal with some shit. And so she's flipping through and it's like, whatever, pictures of him as a baby and killing animals and shit. And so then that's when we find out, like the camera zooms out and we're in a plane. Whoa, but there's a fireplace in the fucking plane. And I'm like, what? But anyway, not important because the crux of the thing is like he's flying to like Japan or somewhere there. He's flying somewhere because he's like the head of this expedition that is going to use this big drill machine, right? To go to the center of the earth or into a volcano or something. It doesn't matter. They're digging into the earth to get something. So we're at a press conference and there's a bunch of people around and Maston is there and he's like, check it out. We sent this, they call it the polar borer. We sent this polar borer in with a bunch of geologists. They were all slaughtered by fucking dinosaurs. And it goes, one dude survived and here he is. His name is Pete something or other. That might not be his name either. I think it is Pete, but it might be Frank. It doesn't matter. So he says, this guy is the only one who survived the encounter. He is traumatized beyond belief, but good news. He's going to go back in to deal with these fucking dinosaurs. And he literally confirms it. He's like, yeah, we saw a Tyrannosaurus Rex. I watched it eat everybody I worked with. And so Maston, a big game hunter, he's like, you know what? Let's go back in and study it. Wink, wink, wink. And so him, Dr. Kawamoto and Pete, what's his nuts, are going to go into a thing. And for some reason, like the government or somebody is like, why don't you take a reporter with you? And he's like, fuck that shit. And then they double down. They say, well, the reporter's going to be a lady. Her name is Frankie. That's who that is. The lady is Frankie. So Frankie comes up and she's like, hey, Mr. Thrust, I'm going to come with you on the expedition. And he's like, since it's the 70s, he goes, women doing things out of a kitchen? Bah! And basically palms her face out of his way. And he storms out of the meeting. And so I want you to picture this. So our hero, Maston Thrust, dude in his late 50s, early 60s. Mm-hmm. Frankie is like late 20s, early 30s. And so they're at this like little Japanese pagoda or something. And it's him, Maston, and a bunch of Japanese people and his bootlicker. And it's so stupid, but I still love it. So Frankie, the reporter, shows up and the bootlicker guy, the sidekick with the big mustache, he goes, hey, she wants to come with you still. And she's like stripping off in a bush, like at the edge of the property. Like, cause she wasn't invited to the party, obviously. He hated her. So she is at the property's boundary, right? Stripping off her clothes and walking behind a bush. And so this gives Maston a boner. And he's like, you know what? I'm going to go tell her I'm sorry and maybe she'll bang me. And it works. Yep. It totally works. He goes over there. He's like, hey, sorry about that. I forgot how hot you are. And she invites him back to her hotel room to look at pictures because she's a photojournalist. And she's like, I can prove myself. I've been to war and all this stuff. So they go back to her hotel room. And it is the most disgusting kiss between two humans I've ever seen. You know that? You know when like dudes with very weak facial hair will try to grow a mustache. And so it's like barely one hair a piece across. Like, it's not thick and luxurious like mine, but it's like really pathetic. And there's like 8 of them. And like they go farther beyond that and like trim it down to where it's like should be a pencil mustache, but now it just looks like a mullet for your mouth.
Yeah.
Dude's got one of those. And it's horrifying. And so you think they're going to bang. And I'm like, oh my God. Because he looks like he smells like a rotisserie chicken that was left under a Jeep for like 2 weeks in like
in Arizona?
In like a really humid climate. Because here it would dry out and there'd be no smell. We're talking like South Carolina.
Here, where I live.
Yeah. Like Jersey, New York, Maine, anywhere on the East Coast. And you go, oh my God, what the fuck is that? That's our main character. So they kiss, and then she immediately like rolls his fat ass over like a beached whale and starts hitting a remote and making him watch a slideshow of her pictures. So he's like, all right, I guess you're coming with us. So, and there's a bit of a racist thing happening too, because it's not only misogynistic toward the lady. Since he's a big game hunter, his sidekick is a dude from Africa named Bunta. He's actually Luther something or other, a basketball player from the time, and has 0 lines. He stands there. He acts stoic. He's very tall. And since he is so tall, his shorts are always short shorts. Yeah. It is the most hilarious thing.
Well, that's also basketball back then. All the shorts were short shorts.
Right, but he's not in a basketball uniform. He's a tracker. He's not like someone who came from the Utah Jazz, just like, hey, I'm here to help.
I mean, he may have.
In the movie, he is not. He is not canonically a basketball player.
He's like in tan.
He's like, yeah, somehow Maston Thrust went to Africa, and he's like, how many 7.5 foot tall?
Shorts were in the 70s, Dave.
I know, but this is beyond that. Like, don't get me wrong. I've seen pictures from the 70s. These are like nut huggers. Because, again, he's 7.5 feet tall or whatever. It's 80% leg. And so his shins are 4 feet long. His thighs are another 3.5, and like it looks like a khaki Band-Aid over his dong because his legs are so long. So they all put on these stupid helmets and they ride into the middle of the earth. And they go, okay, cool, we're here. And everything's like totally fine. They're chilling. They're like, whoa, it's so nice here and it's so cool. And they're walking around and like, oh, look, there's a lake. And so it's just like, well, okay, let's see what happens here. We're looking for this dinosaur because why? I don't know. I don't know why they went there in the first place. It was a geological survey. Surveying what? I don't know. They got eaten by a dinosaur. So everybody who's involved with geology is now like, you know what? Rocks are cool and everything, but there's a dinosaur. If a janitor walked into a room and they're like, we need a doctor. And he's like, sure. You get it? Like switch career paths? Like basically on a car ride. Like, okay, let's go study this thing. They bring Dr. Kawamoto. And so they set up base camp and they go, hey, Dr. Kawamoto, somebody needs to die first. You stay at base camp and we're going to go wander around looking for the dinosaur. And he goes, no problem. I don't speak very much English, so I need to die soon. Ergo, here we go. So while they're fucking around in the wilderness, like a tornado, just like a tornado, the T-Rex comes into the camp and smashes Dr. Kawamoto under his foot, like immediately to get him out of the way. So I changed his name to Dr. Squashimoto. So then we have like just these ridiculous entanglements. Frankie stands on what she thinks is a rock that turns out to be a giant turtle. And since turtles are very slow, it starts moving away slowly. And since she's a woman in the 70s, she's an idiot, and she immediately falls off into the water and is covered in leeches in like 3 seconds.
Yeah, they're hungry.
These giant leeches. She's like, what are those? And I'm like, bitch, are you fucking serious? Like these giant things all over her legs. Whatever. So that the whole time, keep in mind, Maston, even though he's a big game hunter, he's made promise after promise after promise that he's not going to kill this dinosaur. So walking through the forest, they hear something crazy. Boom, T-Rex shows up. And they go, whoa, and Frankie's taking pictures. And so, now keep in mind the scale. In real life, Tyrannosaurus is, 20, 30 feet long, several tons. I don't think they make a gun today, let alone the 70s. And today we're crazy about guns. I don't think they made a gun in the 70s that could take down a Tyrannosaurus Rex. But Maston is hopeful. So of course he pulls out the fucking gun and they're like, so Pete and Frankie are like, hey, let's run away. And Maston's like, it's too dangerous. And as if like, okay, so he pulls out the gun and Bunta has a spear. So we've got one rifle. He brought one gun for protection in a land where there are confirmed dinosaurs. No bombs, no grenades. He brought one rifle and Bunta brought one spear. So Bunta throws his spear and it hits a tree. And he's like, well, that's fucked.
See ya.
Weapon gone. And so Maston's like, I'll take care of it. And he's about to shoot it, and Frankie goes, no, don't shoot it. Like, you could do anything. Like, if I shot you with a BB gun with one pump in the ass, you'd be like, what? That's what this would be.
This sounds like Jurassic Park if they were even worse off.
Yeah, and not only that, if the humans were worse off and the dinosaurs were, like, barely smarter than amoebas. Because like Maston takes one shot at it, it goes boing, and it hits him, and obviously since it is nothing but like a grain of sand to it, it gets pissed. And here's the hallmark of a master hunter, right? You buy an extremely high caliber rifle to kill a giant monster. You fire one shot, you go to clear the breach because it's a bolt action. It gets jammed because we need tension in the movie. Now keep in mind, he brought one gun. He goes, it's jammed. He looks to Bunta and he goes, it's jammed. And so he throws it into a mud puddle and they run away. Can't be helped. Once a gun is jammed, you have to throw it away.
Yeah.
So now he's lost his spear, fired one shot from the rifle and then abandoned it, which, not for nothing, but a jammed cartridge is not like you're a master hunter. How often does that happen to you? Probably a lot. He's like, fuck it.
It's dead to me.
It's dead to me, he says. It's like RJ and his mop. He throws it. So there we go. So then we basically spread the rest of the movie. They're there for literally months. And so it's like so stupid. So after they lose everything, right? And then after that encounter, the T-Rex, I know I called him stupid a little earlier, but he got a little smart because going against everything that an animal would do, this T-Rex sees the polar bear floating in the lake that they popped up in, and he goes, you know what? I love that thing. And he picks it up and he takes it home with him.
It's his best friend.
What?
It's new and different.
But it's a T-Rex. And so he just takes this thing and he's like, you know what? Cool. And he brings it home. His home is nothing but a boneyard of not dinosaur bones. I don't know why this wasn't thought of, but as we are looking at this T-Rex apocalyptic wasteland, because back in the old days, it's kind of like in like The Land Before Time. If you're a carnivore, you're a bad guy. And since this T-Rex is the antagonist, he's a bad guy. And so is, you know what it reminds me of is like where the hyenas live in The Lion King. Mm-hmm. Complete with giant cow skulls. Like they didn't even try to hide it. It's not like they took a cow, pulled the horns off the side and stuck it on the front and they're like, oh, look, it's a weird Triceratops. No, it's like you could walk into any store here in Arizona and buy a cow skull and they're like, great, it's a dinosaur.
This'll work.
And one of the most incredible things happens because as the T-Rex is bringing the polar bear back to his lair, and not only bringing it back, but also like arranging it. Like he's kicking it around with his tail and like scratching his head. And he's like, does it look good over there? Should it go by the credenza? He hits a mountain and it's like a little avalanche. There's some styrofoam rocks and dirt and stuff fall. And you go, oh, what's happening here? And a fucking Triceratops bursts out of the mountain. Out of, not through. It was in the mountain. What?
Camouflage.
as if like, okay, so in our real world, there have been cases where like geologists or whatever have been taking samples, and for some reason, when they pop open a rock, there'll be a living thing inside of it. Like the most prevalent example I can think of is like there was one instance where there was like a rock and somehow this concretion formed around a frog, and they popped open this rock and there was a frog inside. So you go, oh, whoa, but this is a giant ass dinosaur living in a mountain. It's not like there was a thing. There was no like lava. It was just like there was a bunch of rocks, like a Triceratops walked over to a mountain and it like fell on him like bread dough. And he was just waiting for the perfect moment, biding his time. Because when the polar bear knocks a little rock over, he goes, up, time to kill this T-Rex. And there is, I don't want to underplay it, but it is an awful scene in which three men, because our dinosaurs are costumes. They're not CGI. They're not anything fancy. The T-Rex is like a Godzilla-style rubber costume, and our Triceratops is like the classic cow at the Halloween party. It is two dudes, butt to guts, essentially. And what they probably should have done was practice moving in tandem, because it literally looks like two dudes who did not know each other before they jumped into that costume and were told to like act natural. And so the front and back legs are constantly in opposition of one another. And it ultimately leads to very little, because no injury that is sustained, and you probably know this, no injury sustained during the beginning or middle of a movie will have any effect on the character who receives it, right?
Sometimes.
Unless it's written in. Like, unless it's going to be like a hindrance, like, oh, now the plot revolves around the guy with the gangrene hand or whatever. Like 9 times out of 10, a dude can get gut shot in the first 3 seconds of a movie. He'll go, ah! And by the next scene, he's like, woo! Ow! Anyway, let's go on the adventure. And that happens here because our T-Rex antagonist gets gored by the Triceratops, like, and with huge puncture marks, and there's blood gushing, like the type of thing that would have killed literally anything at the end of those horns. And the T-Rex is like, oh fuck, and essentially just kicks the Triceratops in the head. He goes, bonk.
It reminds me of the Obi-Wan season. I won't go into more for that, but continue.
Was there two guys in a costume in that?
No, there's just a lot of people who should have died that didn't. But continue.
See, and that's the thing. We can stretch this out to like a 6-episode thing, because if you get injured in the first 4 episodes, you're going to be okay. The last 2, but it sort of pays off later. So that delightful diversion aside, we now have we cut back to our human people, and they go back to camp and they go, Dr. Kawamoto, and he's dead. Like, he was squashed.
Yeah, I don't screw ruined.
Here's the thing. I can buy, like, if they go back to camp and Dr. Kawamoto isn't there, I can buy that because he was picked up and eaten by a dinosaur. Because he's small enough and the dinosaurs there are big enough that he could have been picked up wholesale and fucked off. No trace of him. But we got confirmation that Dr. Kawamoto was smashed flat under the foot of an 8-ton animal. So even if after he took his foot off and he picked up Dr. Kawamoto and ran the fuck off, have you ever stepped on a grape and then picked it up? Is there anything left behind?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right. So what they should have come back to is like just a blood splatter with like, because it would kind of be cartoony because you couldn't obviously do it in real life, but if you were to be smashed by a T-Rex, what you would see is essentially like a human outline with a blood tie-dye explosion from all orifices. And then like, because here is exactly what would happen if you were crushed by a dinosaur like that. As the foot was coming down and you were being compressed, okay, bones are breaking, blood is leaking from eyes, nose, ears, ass, dick, hole, whatever. But as the foot continues its way down, your organs would shoot out your asshole. So there should have been like a human caricature in blood and then a pile of like intestines, stomach, liver, heart, whatever would have shot out of him. And even if you say, well, Dave, let's be real. The T-Rex picked up the body, he snarfed up those organs, and anything left behind would be picked up by like the carrion feeders. Sure, I'll buy that. But what about the blood? Huh? Anyway, whatever. That completely ridiculous and unnecessary diversion I just did there. Because Pete, he's like, Dr. Kawamoto. Maston is like, don't worry about it. He's dead. And so they're like, well, the good news is, since this is a multi-million-dollar expedition to the center of the earth to find actual dinosaurs that are still alive, this is obviously a highly valuable and sought-after set of resources that we've already blown a lot of money, energy, and time on. So Pete goes, you know what? Don't worry about it. If we're not back in 5 days, they'll probably send someone. They probably have another polar borer, the radio, blah, blah, blah. So Maston's like, nope, not going to happen, bro. And so Pete and I both go, what? Why? He says, Maston says, he's like the Tony Stark of this universe. He says, if we don't make it, he says, fuck, the dumbest, what? Whatever. He says, no, I told them if we didn't make it back and we lost contact, that's it. They're never coming to get us.
Makes that decision for 5 people.
But not only that, 5 people are only the people who came. The amount of manpower and bureaucracy that went into this mission, like the entire, like it's a American-Japanese co-project. Like there are scientists, there are office workers, there is payroll for people cutting checks to hundreds of employees. And because he says so, he's like, you know what? If I don't make it back, like imagine if Tony Stark was like, you know what? I'm going to go fight a villain. And if I don't make it back, don't worry about me. And they're like, well, Tony, who the fuck is going to run Stark Industries? And also, P.S., you're fucking Iron Man. Shouldn't we spend a little effort to get you back? And he goes, no. Give it to the Happy Hogan. What? And so, yeah, that's it. They basically resign themselves to that fate. And then like a little bit of sexual tension arises because Frankie, obviously stranded in the middle of the earth with Pete, the geologist, Maston, the human potato, and Bunta, the man who has no lines and only shows up when he has to throw something. She's like, I'm going to start banging Pete, which causes a little friction. And then we run into Japanese cavemen.
Japanese cavemen?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Because in this movie, it was run by Toho. The effects, the cavemen, the suits, everything that isn't related to the dinosaur or is related to the dinosaurs and the Lost World was handled by Toho. So they did the costumes and they did all the cavemen. So when they encounter these cave people, it is in like, are you familiar with Charlie Chan?
No.
Okay, so do you know how back in the old days, whenever you'd see an Asian person, they'd have big glasses and big buck teeth? Like every racial stereotype you can imagine for an Asian, these cavemen possess, except for the glasses because they're in the Stone Age. But they've all got buck teeth. They've all got this disgusting like crepe hair glued to them in haphazard ways. And so they're a constant nuisance to our people. And it's just like, what do we, it's so like the middle chunk of the movie is almost like Land of the Lost. Like when they get there, they realize they're stuck and now it's just day to day living in the land that time forgot, essentially. So they're like, okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to just kill everybody. We're going to kill the cavemen. We got to kill the T-Rex. Everybody must die because a white man is visiting and is uncomfortable by Asians and monsters. So it's like, now keep in mind, we've now established that they are not going back. Maston said, we're staying here for the rest of our fucking lives. And so Frankie's like, well, you promised you weren't going to kill the dinosaur. And he's like, yeah, bitch, that was before we were stranded here. And now we're going to have to live with that thing or kill it. And she's like, but animals are people too, essentially.
Yeah.
And so Mastin makes a crossbow, which is not going to kill a dinosaur, but it'll fuck up a caveman. Because what he does is, like, the next time they go out hunting animals, the cavemen always come and steal their game because there's more of them than there are of our party. And they're essentially killing the animals with like sticks and rocks and shit. So he makes this crossbow and he's like, yeah, this is going to help. And it does, because like the cavemen show up, try to steal their shit, and they're throwing rocks and stuff. And so Mastin, it's like the absolute opposite of what any rational or even animal would do. Because like all these cavemen are there, and like Mastin starts walking toward them slowly with his homemade crossbow, right? And they all stop their attack. They stop throwing their spears, they stop throwing their rocks, and they're watching him. And so Mastin like gets down on one knee, pulls his crossbow up, aims it, shoots one of the dudes, the main caveman, like right in the heart with his crossbow bolt. And it's like this hilarious, like, duh, and he looks down, there's the bolt, and he's like, mommy, and falls. He doesn't say mommy, but like, it's so hilarious. You should be hearing that from this idiot character. He goes, blam. So all the cavemen come over, they poke his dead body, they go, oh my God. And they fuck off for literally the rest of the movie. That's all they needed to do. In the meantime, there's one lady caveman who has been collecting all the junk they've been leaving behind. And they basically adopt her as an indentured servant.
Yep.
Like they teach her how to brush hair. She's like a little housemaid sort of thing. Like Frankie's teaching her how to cook, and she tries to get with Mastin for some reason, which I feel like he put that in the movie. He's like, you know what? Since I can't get with Frankie, he's talking to the director outside of the movie. He goes, since Frankie's obviously going to get with the younger guy, more close to his age, I need a little action too. So the Japanese cave woman comes in, and she's like, ooh, sneaking in at the middle of the night. And he's like, oh, she stinks, and get out. And so that goes nowhere. So now they've been there for months now. And the way that clothes degraded in the 70s was very cinematic, because the center of all of their clothes are completely intact and clean, but like the sleeves and the pant legs are all frayed. And like not in any specific wear pattern. Like some dude came along with a box cutter and he's like, dee, a bunch of straight lines. And he's like, good news, you're stranded now. So we go through all this bullshit. For some reason, while they're out walking around, they just stumble into the T-Rex boneyard and they find the polar boar, which is it is a huge subterranean drill vehicle, right? It must weigh tons. Like the amount of metal in that drill tip alone, and diamonds and whatever carbide materials that you would need to drill through the Earth's crust, would necessitate it being heavy.
Yep.
But Pete, our dude, he's like, hey, I found the thing. It's basically 10 miles from the water where it needs to be. Let's just drag it back. No problem. Like, in the real world, it takes 8 dudes to push a car down the street. And these guys are like, you know what? There's 3 of us, and Frankie, she ain't going to do shit, obviously. Mastin ain't going to do shit because he's rich as hell. Me and Bunta, we're going to pull it to the lake.
That'd be fine.
And they do, off screen, obviously. But at this point, Mastin is like, you know what? No, I'm staying here. You can fix the thing. I'm staying here to fight this monster. Instead of returning home to indoor plumbing, air conditioning, hygienic water,
place with no dinosaurs,
cooked food, no monsters trying to kill you, no cavemen stealing your raw meat that you're constantly getting worms and cholera from. Like, you're living a shit sty. He's like, no, staying here because I love it that much. And he goes, what? Whatever. Me, Frankie, Bunta doesn't say anything. He just implied going to stay because he goes, staying with Mastin. So, in the meantime, Mastin's like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to build a giant catapult. So when the dinosaur comes back, I'm going to hit it on the head. And they do. Like, nothing ever goes wrong. They build a giant catapult. The dinosaur comes over. Mastin fires the catapult. It bonks him on the head. He's totally fine with it. Nothing happens. The T-Rex takes a boulder bigger than its head, presumably heavy, to the face. And he goes, "Ugh, that's it." It's like, fine. There's one point where the T-Rex has, I think, Frankie and Pete stuck in a cave, and it's like trying to get them. Every dinosaur needs to trap someone in a cave at some point. So the plan is, like, while it's not looking, which is constantly because it's trying to get in the cave, they tie a vine to its tail and a rock. A vine! Not a high tensile rope, not carbon fiber, not steel.
I mean, they held up George, so I'm sure they can hold all these dinosaurs. But
here, George is what? 200 pounds tops?
He's probably not even.
Well, I mean, for that role, he probably did some lifting. I guarantee Brendan Fraser was probably pushing 2 bills. If not that, then like probably right around that area. But with one vine tied to a rock and a T-Rex's tail, a very big rock, a boulder. They push the boulder, the slack, like every Roadrunner cartoon you've ever seen, the boulder takes off, the slack is whipping out of that vine, and pew! Like the T-Rex has a pratfall. Like it looks down, looks at the boulder, realizes what's happening, its tail comes out from under it like it's a fucking rug that's getting pulled. Shoo! Gonzo. And they go, whoo! He'll be gone until he realizes that he can just stand up and come kill us again. So, blah, 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 blah. They get the polar boar fixed, right? And so the only 2 people who now legitimately want to leave are Paul, Pete, whatever his name is, Frankie. They're running. And now keep in mind, Maston, I have not underplayed his character as an asshole this entire time, but he has been a nonstop front to back asshole to everyone from back home to the Lost World. And as they're about to gain sweet freedom back home, or again, everything that they want and nothing they don't, no monsters, no dinosaurs, no nothing. Like, Pete is literally crawling into the polar boar. He's like, yay, we can go home. Frankie's like, you know what? I'm going to make one last attempt to tell Maston that he should come with us. And I'm screaming, why?
She's got to walk, it's like 14 miles that she has to walk back to where Maston is.
Yeah, and now keep in mind, they have, or rather the movie gives me, as the viewer, the impression of a ticking clock. Because they say, well, we fix it, we've got to get out of here now, because the polar boar can only do one more journey with the fuel resources that it has. That is not a ticking clock. It's not like we have to go before the gas spoils or the battery loses charge. They just say we have one more left in the tank and we got to go now. Why? I mean, yeah, of course, there are dinosaurs and it's scary as hell here, but there's no real rush. So the whole time, like in, I've seen it in a million movies, but like you've got a good old boy in a pickup truck and you got a bunch of dudes in the back, like banging on the hood as they chase it, like Forrest Gump.
Yeah. Yeah. I was going to say, that's literally what had come to my head initially.
Bingo. It's like that. So Pete is in the polar boar, like banging the top of the thing. He's like, yeah, let's go, Frankie. And she's like, I'm going to go get Maston. And he has the final refusal of the call. She goes, please come back with us. And he's like, nah, I belong here. This dinosaur and me were 2 of a kind, and I'm going to kill it so I can be 1 of a kind. You're obviously banging Paul, Pete, whatever his name is. You chill out with him.
Poop J.
You got to go meet Poop J back at the polar boar. And she goes, all right. You've been a great friend and all this other stuff. And thanks for the kiss. And you basically fucked us over left, right, and center. But I still love you, dude. And they fist bump or whatever. And it's such an anticlimactic ending. Because as I mentioned before, when the T-Rex took the boulder to the head and was, the pratfall with the boulder and the vine, he has taken a shit ton of damage. And also, remember, he was gored by a giant Triceratops right through the gut. Not a problem. They get back in the polar boar and sink into the water. And then we just cut back to the edge of the lake. And Maston is standing there with a hand on his hip. There's Bunta like, God damn it, I should have gone back. And the Japanese housemaid who's like, I guess I'm here too. And they turn around, walk into the jungle. The T-Rex screams and it's the end. Yep. We learn nothing. Nobody won. Nothing happened. Like, the whole point of the first trip, lost to history. The point of the second trip, don't know. Question mark. And then we're left with, because like, here's the thing. In the real world, the second time the polar bear comes back and they go, yeah, definitely. It happened again. The first time, everybody but me was killed. The second time, everybody but me and Frankie. Probably Gonzo. Anyone, like, there must be more billionaires in this universe. Anyone with any sense would be like, wait, there were dinosaurs and you brought nothing to protect yourself? You brought no food? You brought nothing to, like, prepare, essentially? It's like, if you were to get into the car and drive to the bookstore, you probably wouldn't bring a lot of supplies. But if you're going to the center of the fucking earth, pack a couple sandwiches, bring a couple bottles of water. No, like,
I don't know if Frankie's there, she could make the sandwiches.
Right.
But you would need the raw materials. Like, if you were going to a sandwich shop, you could say, great. Once we get there, Frankie, you make the sandwiches. But if you're going to the middle of fucking nowhere, you can't be like, Frankie, because there's nothing. Also, they brought one outfit apiece. None of them brought any luggage. They wear one outfit through the entire movie.
Yeah.
And this is a billionaire, big game hunter, running a business so large he was able to install a fireplace into a plane. And when he went to the center of the earth, here's another thing that I want to, if you want to watch this movie, you're going to love this part. Because in the gearing up scene where we're showing the polar bear and it's like the science is happening and there's people in white lab coats and there's smoke and shit, like all the sciencey shit is happening. And we cut into it. Everybody is wearing like space, like gold, or not gold, but like silver lame jumpsuits, and they've got space helmets and everything. And as they're panning through, it's like da 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 da, and they're wearing, because elements are in play. You need to have insulation, or I don't know. You would probably need some sort of protection against whatever's going to happen to you as you drill through the Earth's core. And as the camera pans, and we see spacesuit, 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 there's mast and thrust in essentially a howdy doody costume. He's wearing a leather jacket with fringes up and down the arms. Like he's a leather daddy going on a fucking bike trip on his hog. And a red kerchief, like he's a fucking cowboy. He's wearing cowboy boots.
Maybe the Triceratops was his hog.
He had no idea there was a Triceratops. They only confirmed the T-Rex. But that's beside the point. If they were like, this is a scientist, like imagine you, PJ, you're rich, right? You're an Elon Musk or a Jeff Bezos and you want to go to space, right? And you say, I made this spaceship. I'm rich as fuck. I'm bringing an astronaut. I'm bringing a bunch of people who know how to survive in space. And then you do that classic, like you've seen it in a million movies, a spacewalk, where all the astronauts got their helmet under one arm and they're waving to the crowd. They're all wearing those special suits that keep you alive. And as they're panning, there's just a dude in like Levi's and like a Hard Rock Cafe t-shirt. And he's not got a space helmet. He's just got like a motorcycle skull cap. And you go, what's this guy fucking doing? But since he's bankrolling it, no one said shit. So there he is, sitting like an old lumpy
Dave, are you
howdy-doody.
trying to sell this movie to me?
That's a good question.
Or are you trying to give me all the reasons as to why I shouldn't watch this movie?
The reasons why you shouldn't watch are the reasons why I enjoy it, probably. Because there are a very select subset of people who can see that when a movie gets bad enough, it flips around to good. And this movie is really terrible. And since it is so terrible, it's awesome. Because all the things come together. Like you would think in a big budget movie like Jurassic Park with dinosaurs, everybody is decked out. Everybody has a specific role. Everybody's there to do a job and comes prepared utterly. In this movie, everybody shows up essentially in jeans and a t-shirt for the biggest moment in their fucking lives. They say, we're digging to the center of the earth to find dinosaurs. Prepare yourself. And Maston gets a leather jacket and one gun.
I enjoyed this movie, and I do not like. I'm not a big old movies person.
Yeah, because here's what is lost in translation. As I'm explaining all these things to you, you're picturing it, and I guarantee the picture in your head is not half as ridiculous as it is in the movie. And that's where the enjoyment is, because it's so... There's a special quality that is almost ethereal. In a good movie, all the technical stuff comes together, the actors are earnest, and you feel like they're a part of an actual world. Everything comes together and it's seamless. If any of that falls apart, it becomes hilarious. Mm-hmm. Until the characters become self-aware, then it sucks. So like imagine Star Wars, right? Where all of the characters are acting as earnestly as they do, but then the budget was slashed to the bone. So imagine instead of Yoda being a marvelous Jim Henson-esque creation that you can utterly believe in the moment, is replaced with a sock puppet with googly eyes that's painted green. But they're not winking the camera. Luke is still as serious as ever. Yoda, even though he's now a sock puppet, is deadly serious about the universe coming to an end, but it's hilariously under budget. But all of that would fly out the window if one of them implied a wink to camera. There's a movie out there called, The Skull of Cadavra or The Skeleton of Cadavra. It doesn't matter. It sucks. It was a movie made in the spirit of the B movie where they're constantly like, can you believe how crazy this is? The reason why like the Black Scorpion or the Giant Claw or any of those terrible movies are great is because everyone in it is deadly serious. They're taking the threats seriously despite the lack of budget. And you can do that the other way too. You can have $1 million billion in the sets, but if you got shitty actors, it all falls apart. This is right in there. It's the cream in the Oreo. Everybody is deadly serious. They say, God damn it, we're going to have to survive here with dinosaurs. And you go, God, this is serious. And then when the camera pans over to see the dinosaur is just like a rubber ball sack. And the optical effects are terrible. Like the green screen is awful. Like, you know, in old movies when, before they got the technology down, whenever they would meld stuff like that, one of the footages, whether it's the backdrop or the people in situ, there's something lost in translation. Like they are weird and there's heavy lines around them. But since they're acting like it's real, you go, what? And it's fun. So with all that, so here are the big beats. Going to the center of the earth to get a dinosaur. We get there. There's a dinosaur. Now we got to leave. And they leave. That's all that happens. And I can't sell it any more than that because that's literally the whole plot. But it's in the details that I can't tell you about that make this movie something special. But if I've not impressed that upon you, so be it. Right? Because no movie is going to fit everybody's tastes. But I think there's something here. That's why I'm telling you about it.
I mean, it sounds ridiculous enough to probably watch. So, like, but it just by the sheer ridiculousness of the movie. So,
and that's I'm trying to hammer home is that personally I'm describing this to you because I think it's worth a watch, simply because an earnest attitude in a hilariously under budget situation. That's the thing. I can't describe what makes a bad movie good because I've been through this situation a zillion times, like with Birdemic, for example. Birdemic is a hilarious, enjoyable movie and it's awful. But since the director at the helm thought, you know, it was this brilliant piece of art and wanted the script delivered as written, he wanted everything as he wanted it and got it. It was a hilarious failure. And so you can watch that time and time again and be like, why are they doing that? What's happening here? It's confusing, but that's what brings you to it.
Yeah. Like that and like Suburban Sasquatch.
Yeah.
Like all those.
Or Lichen Colony, all
Yeah.
the terrible movies out there that essentially have no plot. They're just a reason for whoever wanted to make it to make it. Yeah. Like if you say, okay, the plot of this movie is basically nothing, but wouldn't it be cool to get Toho, the people who made Godzilla? No, sorry, I fucked that up. It wasn't Toho, it was Rankin Bass.
Yeah.
Rankin Bass did, but they farmed it out to Japan. But it is like Toho Studios. It is a complete ripoff of the Godzilla costume, and they even steal the Godzilla roar. Like, they weren't fucking around. They were like, the budget is so small, we've got to steal what we can when we can. And so when you hear the Godzilla roar, you go, that's where the budget is. They're literally ripping off things that take no effort to just recreate slightly differently.
Yeah.
So, do you think, as I described it to you, this is something you would want to partake in?
It sounds ridiculous enough that I would probably watch it. So, yes.
So, it is called The Last Dinosaur. It is one of my favorites. It somehow survived despite the fact it shouldn't. This DVD that I'm holding right now is from the MGM Archive Collection, which means there was just enough appeal to people that they released it, but put zero effort into it. This is a straight film transfer. There's no bonus features. It's not cleaned up digitally. This is the movie on a disc.
Yeah. And you can tell.
Yeah, and you can tell. Because like when it starts, it's just like, watch movie, and you can hit yes or turn your DVD player on. And that's another part of why this is so great. Like, if you got this and it was like the Black Scorpion or whatever, because that's another one that I brought up, like there are remasters of that and there's behind the scenes stuff because there's stop motion involved and there's a bunch of, like, that was a big deal. This got zero effort from start to finish. And by finish, I mean this DVD I'm holding. No further work was done after they were like, that's a wrap.
I literally can't even watch it on a streaming service.
No. The only I'm surprised that, because the way I came into this was on the other show I do with my buddy, Raiders of the Lost Genre. The only way he found it was someone bootlegging a Korean Laserdisc that they recorded from the Laserdisc to VHS and then from VHS to DVD. Wow. So the quality was a copy of a copy, and on top of that, throughout the entire thing were Korean subtitles. And despite that, PJ, despite the fact that it was a copy of a copy, so the degradation upon degradation, and then the confusing giant Korean subtitles, nothing could turn me away. That is how solid this movie is. And I say solid with a grain of salt, or with a pinch of salt even, because there's nothing there. It's a puff of smoke. It looks like a boulder, but when you go to push it, it's actually a mirage. And so we're in that middle ground of like, well, there's a costume. There are actors. Okay, so like the main guy, Maston Thrust, is played by Richard Boone, who I guess, I don't know of him before this movie, but he was a TV and movie actor for Westerns. And so that's basically what he is here. He's a cowboy who aged out of being a cowboy and now is just running around shooting dinosaurs. And it's terrible, but it's so good. It's so good because, like, I don't like bloodless emotional attempts. I don't like when, like, let's say, because every movie has to have a female love interest, even if it is unnecessary or wasn't in the source material. You've got to have the main character or our hero find a lady and be happy at the end. And it's insulting when they're forced into it and then made to act as if it's a real thing. This, they're forced into it, but no one cares. Like at one point, Maston just stumbles upon Frankie and Pete about to bang caveman style 10 feet from where they live, and it comes to nothing. Maston walks up, he sees him banging, and he's like, oh, that's a bummer. I thought we were going to bang. And then the issue is dropped.
Yep.
No time wasted on personal details. I don't know anything about these characters beyond the fact that they wanted to go to the center of the earth, and it's beautiful. It is a beautiful disaster. So, it's so, look how fucking cheap this is. There's no insert. But yeah, so.
I mean, I'll have to find it, but I literally don't have a way to watch DVDs.
Oh yeah, you don't have a DVD player. Well, good news. I can probably get this digitally to you. But here's the thing. Full disclosure, to make everything right with the universe, I'm going to buy another copy and send you a rip so that way MGM Archive will still get their money for the copy. I'll get to have two, and I'll share one with you.
Steve in the basement will be like, God damn it, I have to make another copy of this goddamn movie.
Just dude, like a 600-pound dude sitting in a rolling chair, like watching old episodes of The Office, like in a deep, dank basement at the MGM studios, and like just lit by the glow of the small TV he snuck into the basement. And he hears like a ding, and he's like, and he looks over, he's like, someone ordered a copy of The Last Dinosaur. And he's like, God damn it.
It's a reorder.
He goes, who the hell?
Pop the CDR out of the big jewel case and pop it into the big computer and wait the real time. Because I'm sure, you're not going to allocate resources to seriously, it's a sticker on a rewritable CD.
Yeah.
And it's part of the charm. It's part of the charm. So I also hope that anyone listening feels the need to go out and buy this and watch it or find it somehow. Because I think the DVD cost me $6. Because
I like bad movies that are bad, campy movies. I'm okay with them. So
yeah, and that's the thing is I never understood what camp meant. Like we say, oh, it's a campy movie. I still, to this day, if you were to say what is camp, I don't know. But if I had to guess, I would say it's people taking something serious that they shouldn't. No one in this movie should have been as invested as they were. And
yeah,
here's what I think you need. You need serious characters in a zany world, a la this movie, or zany characters in a serious world, a la Beavis and Butthead, or any other property where the main characters are completely dysfunctional in a functional world. Mm-hmm. And what we have here are deadly serious, deadly earnest characters in a world surrounded by Japanese cavemen with buck teeth and rubber dinosaurs. And it's beautiful. It's not Star Wars, so I'm not going to,
Definitely
not. Can't hold the candle to the Mandalorian or Baby Yoda
or Cars
or Yaddle or Cars.
I've been watching a lot of stuff recently, so
like what?
I just finished watching The Boys and Stranger Things. So
okay, so small diversion. Yeah, I have wanted to watch The Boys because after I watched Invincible, I was like, I can't believe I waited this long. So The Boys is probably next on my list as far as subversion of the superhero genre.
The Boys is fantastic, especially it is great. It is absolutely great.
That's what I keep hearing.
I cannot stress enough how good The Boys is. Especially after I'm current on the season that's been releasing each week.
Mm-hmm.
It's absolutely fantastic. And I keep seeing a lot of news articles about it recently, and I'm just like, yeah, no, it's so good, so well done.
And so, we kind of talked about this before the show, and I like to broach it now because you and I have the same sentiment, at least right now, where movies, they just don't grab like they did or they should.
It's the movies don't grab me because I tend to really want story,
mm-hmm.
and you can't create and have a well-crafted story or you could, but it's not common.
It's hard
to have it in a movie because it's such a short period of time,
right.
And a lot of times I like these massive worlds with a background to all these different, and you can't do that in such a short period of time. So like shows tend to lend better to me in that regard.
I've said this before, and maybe you'll agree, maybe you won't, but movies are perfect for conversion of short stories. A short story is the bare minimum of like writing, but it is overabundant for a movie. Because if you have 90 minutes and you've got to go over like 12 to 20 pages, fine, great. You can build a world in that. But like Harry Potter is 17 million words.
Harry Potter would have been, I think it would have been even more incredible if it was just a show.
Yeah.
If Harry Potter was a show and they built out those characters and really embellished on everything, I think that it would have been even bigger than it was if it in movies.
Totally. Same thing with It. Like It, they whatever. You can take
Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Like same thing.
You can't take these decades long in the making books or properties. And even though It or Lord of the Rings is split into 2-hour movies or 6 4-hour movies or whatever, it always falls flat because you need a lot of unpacking. But you also have the tricky area of visual storytelling, not to bring up my beloved movie Cars again, but in Cars, John Lasseter and all the Pixar people, spent like half a year just bumblefucking around Route 66, collecting stories, collecting personal anecdotes from people who lived it, right? Mm-hmm. And they put all those details in the movie visually. You would have to really dig and go off of a lot of implication and do a lot of research to get the story completely of Radiator Springs. But it's all depicted in just, set dressing.
Yep.
And that's another problem I have is like a lot of properties need 10, 12 episodes, 1 or 2 seasons to really flesh them out. But then you have like 10, 12 hours to dedicate yourself to. And you go, because the movies are short and they don't flesh out everything, so they feel lackluster. But then on the other side, it can feel daunting to be like 10 hours.
Yeah, it's a weird balance. They have to engage you enough to make you want to keep going.
Well,
Yeah.
with, like Stranger Things, I think they did a really good job establishing all those main characters in the first season.
Yeah.
Like, overall, I mean, yeah, obviously there's still more development in the second season and stuff like that, but
then we have problems of, okay, this is the nature of the problem that is most irritating to me, right? When you have a story that is completely self-contained in one season, from start to finish, everything pays off, like The Haunting of a Hill House, right? Mm-hmm. I love that. Altered Carbon, loved that. It was perfectly encapsulated in one short run, but it made money. And the people who own those properties go, we like money. And guess what? Since it was made of whole cloth, the first season, we can just fucking do that shit again. And in the first of every attempt is going to be your best. It's going to be all your best ideas. It's going to be where your heart is at because you have to fight to get it on the screen.
right.
And then the money comes in and they go, well, what else can we wring out of this old bar rag? And so this doesn't happen all the time, but often what will happen is money enters and artistic integrity flies out the window. Like
Yeah.
Cars. Cars 1. Fine. It's not great.
How are we back on Cars?
You'll always get back to Cars.
Because Cars
Cars is everything right now.
Because my kid watches it literally 4 or 5 times a day.
Oh, I used to watch Jaws when I was a kid. So
Right.
that explains a lot.
Okay, let's use Jaws then. We'll use Jaws. So Jaws, a perfect self-contained narrative. We got a small town. We got a problem with the shark. At the end, the shark blows up. It needn't have continued. But you know what we got? Jaws 2, Jaws 3D, and Jaws 4, The Revenge.
Some continuations get better though, Dave.
Some, yes. But how
like
many?
Fast and Furious.
Shut up.
And Mission Impossible.
But, okay, if you like those movies, sure, I'll grant it. I did not see any improvement in any of the Fast and the Furious movies that I saw. Keeping in mind, I saw about 30%
They
of
just
them.
embraced the ridiculousness of what they were.
Right, but that's...
And really leaned into it.
But here's what we're looking at. The Fast and the Furious was not a compelling narrative, so if you strung it out for 40 movies...
Oh, there is no narrative.
Exactly.
You're just watching them for how ridiculous they
Shiny
are.
cars go fast. Awesome. We can make a fucking million movies about that. In Altered Carbon...
But that's not what everything after like Fast and Furious 4 isn't about cars anymore.
But yeah, then it becomes like bullshit about what people...
They're just heist movies. That's what they are.
But it's all cars still. It doesn't matter if they're not. They're still cars. They're like, hey, it's Fast and the Furious. We're still using cars now. Instead of racing, we're now racing towards treasure, or we're racing away from the cops as we steal the treasure.
Don't you want the treasure, Dave?
It doesn't matter. There's no story, so it doesn't matter if you go from a race movie to a heist movie to a fucking birthday show for kids. There was nothing there.
As Dom Toretto would say, it's all about family.
Family, yeah. What's the big overall? Like, Dom Toretto says, family. And every idiot who's subnormal IQ-wise goes, yeah, I have a family and I like cars. You would not see Richard Dreyfuss in Jaws 2 go, sharks. Would you? No, because it would be creatively bankrupt. But if you've got Dom Toretto being like, we're family, I like a fast car, and it's a fucking cool thing, and here's all my friends. What are you going to ruin by making another? Nothing.
Just like Cars, the movie.
Yeah, so you can say, yeah, great. Just like...
Jeez, we've just spun this back to Cars like three times.
We can always spin it back to Cars. But that's the thing. If you start with no idea, but shiny shit and cool music for the time, then you just... one after another, because there's nothing there. When you roll out sugar cookie dough, each time you punch into that shit will be a good cookie. Because it's all the same shit and there's nothing special about it. Mm-hmm. But if you were to take Jaws, which in this case would be like a fucking creme brulee souffle that's a story high and like has fireworks and shit going off all around it, how are you going to make another one that impresses like that? Sometimes it happens. Terminator 1 did give us Terminator 2, which I think exceeds expectations and blows the first one out of the water. But Terminator 1 and 2 are basically bereft of story also. The overarching theme is like...
movies do well when they don't have story, Dave.
Yeah, because they can make whatever they want out of the next one and not have to like continue on like Altered Carbon.
Very little story does well in movies.
Right, but here's the thing. What happens to it? Avatar, no story. Visually brilliant.
Oh, don't bring up Avatar for me right now. That goddamn movie.
But who talks about it? Everybody saw it. Remember Speed Racer?
No, everyone talks about Avatar, and it's just Fern Gully, which is
I've never in my life as a human had a conversation about Avatar the movie after it left theaters.
Anytime someone brings up Avatar to me, I tell them that besides the fact that it looks great, it is a terrible movie that is just stolen off of so many previous movies in the past.
Wait a minute. Are we talking about Fast and the Furious again?
No.
What the? Well, yeah, but that's the thing. Like, we'll talk about, that dynamic. We have James Cameron, who is a visual dude. He's like a Bethesda. I talked about this with RJ. There are people out there who push the envelope of technology and say story doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. There's no story in Terminator 2. It's basically John Connor, his mom, and Arnold going from place to place. And each time they go to a place, Arnold goes, the next thing that's going to happen is this. And then that happens. And after that happens, Arnold goes, the next thing that'll happen is this. And then that happens. And after that is done, Arnold goes, the next thing that'll happen is this. But it's an awesome movie, despite the fact that if it were someone telling you a story, you'd be like, seriously? So they go to a place, the thing that he said would happen happens, and then that happens for 90 minutes? What?
But visually, it's real good.
Right. He lucked out on that one because the the pushing. Thank God for Arnold Schwarzenegger and God damn it, what's his name? Patrick. Who played the T-1000?
Oh God.
He was in the X-Files latter day. Anyway, he's a great actor too.
You're asking the wrong person. I've never seen a full episode of X-Files, so.
Oh my.
Well, God damn it, Archie. God damn it, PJ. See, now when you say you haven't seen things, I mean, my mind automatically kicks into RJ.
He really hasn't seen things, so.
Oh yeah.
Right. But that, some people are just.
But he has seen all of Cars, and you have not.
Yeah, he has seen that. But here's the thing.
You will never get me to watch all of Cars, so good luck.
What about Cars 2? Not just kidding.
No.
But here's the thing. I feel for RJ in that as much shit as he gets for movies, I get for video games.
That's true.
I grew up with a blind spot because I had an NES, nothing, PlayStation. Mm-hmm. So as everybody was like going through all of these elaborate narratives,
the golden age of certain games,
falling in love with JRPGs and platformers and shit, I was out riding my bike or doing other goofy shit.
I had an N64.
Right. So
that's it.
That's
the best stories ever created in JRPGs were on the Super Nintendo.
Right. So that's why I have sympathy for people like myself and like RJ when you miss a cultural phenomena wholesale. Mm-hmm. Like you could say, haven't you seen X movie? And literally everybody who lives outside of an indigenous cutoff tribe in the Amazon has seen it, except RJ. I am that guy when it comes to video games. Because you can say, haven't you played blah? No, whatever the blah is. I haven't played Horizon Zero Dawn. I haven't played literally anything. The Last of Us, none of the big ones.
I mean, you're not missing a lot with those, honestly.
No, but that's the thing. I still take a lot of shit because even if you haven't seen Terminator 2, or even if you have seen Terminator 2, you realize there's not much there.
It's just an action. It's just a good action movie. That's all it is.
No, I mean narratively. You're not.
Yeah, I mean, movies aren't good narratively. I cannot think of movies that have great narrative. If you told me to name some, I don't think I could.
There are some that focus on like characters. Like I don't want to sound like a whatever. This is going to sound like
I think Clue style movies do good with narrative.
Clue? Like the movie with Tim Curry?
Not the actual movie with Tim Curry, but like movies like Knives Out.
Yeah, like small character studies, like 12 Angry Men. That's the one I was going to get to. 12 Angry Men takes place entirely in one room with 12 dudes all talking about a single case. That is perfect. It is a great narrative because not only do you eventually get the backstories of everyone involved that sort of pays out throughout the running time, you also get a overview of the case, a bunch of the witnesses get characterized, and it's everything that you would probably want because everybody is fleshed out. Nothing is left to the imagination by the end, and it takes you on a ride that's satisfying.
Yeah.
But for most movies, it's going to be like, okay, what do we need to cut to get this to 90 minutes? Because if it's 2 hours, we can't get 3 extra showings per day to get the money, which is why I'll never watch Top Gun number 2, 3, whatever. Like where the military is so desperate, they call upon a 60-year-old dude to fly a fighter pilot. Why do I care? Right? It may be a great character study of what he's done with his life now that, Val Kilmer is slowly turning into a pumpkin. Poor Val Kilmer. But that's just it. There's going to be that gradient of fluff, something in the middle that sucks, and then very close cropped narratives.
Yeah.
But that's where we are. It's a minefield. And that's why, especially now, more than ever, with everybody and their mom producing content, and I'm sure the person or people behind making whatever it is, they go, whoa, I can't believe we're offering 10 hours of what I personally, as the creator, thinks is primo. Yeah. But since there's a million other people doing it, how do you cut through the noise to find out what is actually good? I mean, you throw a dart at a map, man. I'm hoping I'm throwing a dart at The Last Dinosaur for you. Anyway, PJ, I want to thank you for coming on the show and indulging me in this experiment. Was it good? Time will tell.
I mean, I'm going to watch the movie, so.
I'm glad. That was my whole point of this, is to try and get somebody on board, because how else are you going to do it? It literally takes so long to get people invested. I mean, there are some people who can look at a teaser trailer and see 30 seconds of footage and be like, oh my God. But those people are typically hacks and are just going into 3 seconds of the new Marvel movie. It'll have people creaming their jeans. If you say the word Star Wars, it inspires ignominious hate and love because the brand. Mm-hmm. And with something like The Last Dinosaur, if I go, watch The Last Dinosaur, and you go, what is it about? A guy who takes a bunch of people to find some dinosaurs.
It's a great movie.
And it needs, people need to go to bat for this type of shit. There will always be a line around the globe of people ready to take up the bat for Star Wars. Who's gonna big up The Last Dinosaur? Me. That's why I think it's worth your goddamn time. Star Wars will always be there. The Jurassic Park franchise, sadly now, will always be there. So what do? You can eat your popcorn and watch your fun monster movies. I'm sorry I brought up Jurassic Park franchise, because at one point you could say, I like dinosaurs, ergo I like Jurassic Park. Now it's to the point where they are just movie monsters. It would be like...
Oh, the new ones are terrible.
I know. It would be akin to today saying you're a Jurassic Park fan, ergo you are a fan of dinosaurs. It would be like saying, I liked watching the original Frankenstein, ergo I am a fan of experimental surgery. It's completely fucked. Like, if you like Jurassic Park, you don't like dinosaurs, you like monsters. You like monster movies. Congratulations. It's not a bad thing. You're just not a paleontologist, fuckwit. Sorry. And just because you watch Frankenstein doesn't mean you're a doctor now. You're, whatever. It's fine. Just don't lie to yourself and me, because I have integrity. Anywho, back at it. And by at it, I mean we're ending the show. Thanks for coming on, PJ. I hope that if you do watch it, you'll want to talk about it a little bit and we can connect and you'll love every bit of it. I guarantee. That's my men's warehouse. That's my men's warehouse promise. You're going to love The Last Dinosaur, I guarantee.
I will report back.
All right. So, also, listener, if you've come this far, thank you. Because, what? You weren't expecting this.
We were all over the place.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, and that's the thing. Because I thought, in my head, I'm going to tell my hilarious Cars joke. I'm going to tell my hilarious Star Wars joke. I'm going to tell you about The Last Dinosaur. You're going to be won over, and we're going to high five through the camera at the end. That did not happen. But something else did. So, listener, thank you. And I hope we can see you next time on another episode of whatever comes out on this channel. So, let's say goodbye. We're out of here. Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Beat stuff.
For this. Try to.
Fistful of Podcasts Radio.